Aside from the potential restricted free agency drama, confidence has been the name of the game for the Phoenix Suns this offseason. We'll go through players, coach, general manager, diagnose how each can get their confidence back and keep it on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendan Clean, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day. We're going strong through June, guys. No days off here, so hopefully you are not taking any days off from listening. Hit subscribe, hit follow wherever you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're finding us on YouTube, that is the best way to support the show. Hit subscribe right down below and drop me a comment. Let me know what you think needs to happen for this team to get its mojo back, get that confidence that they obviously were lacking by the end of the second round. That's the name of the game, as I said on today's show. You can also follow us on social. I don't drop that in often enough at Locked On PHX Suns or me at Brendan Clean 14. Let's go here. So Monday morning after game 7, you had Monty Williams asked about what happened. And confidence was the thing that stuck out to me. I've mentioned this a number of times. I have a quote for you right here. Monty was asked, quote, "You guys have a young core with Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, and Cam Johnson. When you look at this series and the way the Mavericks were able to key in on Booker and Chris Paul not being 100%, what do you look at for the younger guys as far as areas you could improve with the program going forward?" He said, Monty, quote, "Right now I look at myself and how do I put those guys in a position where they can be more confident when teams are taking away Book and Chris. The one thing I'm seeing in the playoffs, when you watch all these games, everybody has 3 or 4 guys maybe that can put the ball down and go get a bucket. And I'm asking myself over the course of the season, did I put those guys in enough positions where they can grow and do that? We thought that we did, but when you look at this past series, maybe not." And that was the most enlightening thing that came out of that whole press conference on Zoom that day, which was only about 10 minutes, unfortunately. There was obviously the DeAndre Ayton stuff and Monty not committing to him and this and that. And obviously we've beaten that stuff into the ground. And I have too. But the confidence thing has really stuck with me. So in addition to that, though, Mikal, in an appearance on the JJ Redick Old Man and the 3 podcast, said that he felt like the problem with that Game 7 loss was heading into the Game 6, first and foremost, they were overconfident. And then when they lost that one, that they kind of hung their heads a little bit, and the poor early start to Game 7 shook them. They could hear the crowd start to sort of groan and lose energy. And, you know, you take all of that, Mikal, Monty, et cetera, and you also just kind of run it up against the fact that at their best, the Suns had this swagger and this energy and this cohesion, and those were their biggest weapons as a team during the regular season. So how can they get that back? What needs to happen? So I kind of actually have what I think is a fun way of going through this that made the most sense to me, which is I went through and got what may sound, well, I'll let you guys decide. I got some quotes that I like, some of which I remembered, some of which I found doing research from across the NBA, and some historical comparisons and things like that to try to see, like, what do the best at this think, and how do they generate confidence on their teams, players, coaches, and all the rest. So we'll start with a very obvious place, which is Michael Jordan. The most famous quote that he has that's sort of about confidence is, I never looked at the consequences of missing a big shot. When you think about the consequences, you always think of a negative result. And I thought that's interesting. I mean, it's a very MJ quote, but it's also sort of like, if you're thinking at all, you're probably thinking negatively. And that, it just sort of hits home for me. In its simplicity, in its own way, you're kind of like, yeah, you know, you don't really visualize positive outcomes, especially in sports sometimes, because the good thing, the made shot, the executed play, that's routine. The thing that you would have to almost like account for would be the mistake. So I think back to game 7, and the Suns were 1 of 5 at the rim in the first quarter of that game. Mikal and Booker were 1 of 10 combined overall in the first quarter. But at the same time, I come away, and this will be a through line through the whole episode, feeling like failing so badly the way that they did may actually give them more peace, because I feel like these Suns players have now basically confronted, maybe not Chris Paul. He's had a lot longer of a career, maybe not Jay Crowder, but they've basically confronted the worst loss of their careers. This is the worst loss most of them have ever had, and it'll be the worst loss probably that they ever do have, just considering how big the blowout became. I wonder if that allows them to look past that negative manifestation and just move on. Next quote is from Giannis Antetokounmpo. He said, I think it was last year during the finals or during the playoffs at some point, maybe after the finals. He said, the mindset to have, quote, the mindset to have when you focus on the past, that's your ego. I did this in the past. I won that in the past. When I focus on the future, that's my pride. I'm going to dominate. That's your pride talking. I try to focus on the moment, in the present. That's humility. That's being humble. That's a skill I'm trying to master, and it's been working so far, so I'm not going to stop. Maybe you guys don't want to hear about Giannis, especially as it pertains to the 2021 playoffs, but I love this just generally as a mindset for the Suns next season. Like, I think this is exactly what they should embody. Focus on the moment, be humble. Don't focus on the failures of the past, the highs or lows of the past 18 months, and don't focus so much on manifesting a title in 2023. I think that got to them too, undoubtedly, this past season of, we're going to win the championship. We're the best team. And there's a confidence to that. There's the JaVale McGee, screaming in the dog pound thing that they did pregame down in the tunnel of, we're the best team in the world. And I think all that stuff has its place and it can help certain people. But I also think that there's a piece that comes with not dwelling on that just as much as you're trying not to dwell on the failures that you've gone through in the past. Next quote is from Kevin Durant. And I think this is actually from the summer after he won his first championship. It might have been from one of the Bill Simmons podcasts. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But here's what he said, quote, you got to know what you're playing for. If you're playing to impress people, 9 times out of 10, you're always going to be disappointed when you miss a shot or you make a mistake because you'll feel embarrassed. But if you know why you're out there, if you know that you want to just get better and you want to master the game, you're going to be excited about mistakes. Get excited about messing up because you know that you can learn from those mistakes quicker. It's just all about being confident in yourself and knowing it's going to take some time for you to get where you want to get to, but enjoy the process, as everybody says. Let me just throw this out there. This is another little nugget for me that makes my eyes get a little bit wide as to why KD would be such fantastic fit in Phoenix. But obligatory Kevin Durant to the Suns mention off of the bingo board now. Let's actually get to this quote. It feels like most of the team probably had this feeling that from Chris Paul's trade to this year's playoffs was this, 18-month crazy process that I'm sure most of them felt like had a real shot to end with a championship this year, just like we all did, right? But where do you go from there? It's hard to get any higher than that. And I think this next year, starting now, really, this whole team will have to rededicate itself to that grind. And that's why I've been trying to focus the show that way, to be honest, of like, I did the show last week, which I recommend because I broke down a lot of this stuff about getting back to 2019, almost starting not from scratch. This team's a lot better than it was then, but getting back to like, this is a build. This is a process. This is not done, I guess is a good way to put it. And this quote really shows you that. And it's about one of the guys who, while it might be a very easy, basketball seems to come very easy to Kevin Durant, he also has an obvious work ethic, and he's achieved the highest highs you can find in this sport. And, he seems to have generated a lot of peace. You listen to the David Letterman thing that he did on Netflix, things like that, where you can tell he is in a place where he's not consumed with, being at the top, being considered to be the very, very best at this or that, to dominate the news, to get the credit, etc. He's not seemingly quite so consumed by that. And this quote sort of exemplifies why. Where you go if you're the Suns it sounds very cliche, but it's not a lie. You go back to the gym, you go back to the film room, you go back together in that shared space to improve and develop and get closer to each other and get back to it. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I think that will be, this type of stuff will be a lot of where I think the players' minds will have to be. Let's get into where Monty Williams' mind himself will have to be in a second. First, though, guys, today's show brought to you by Sakara. Feeling your best starts with what you eat, and Sakara helps you live a healthy, balanced lifestyle and truly enjoy it with delicious, plant-rich, transformational nutrition that builds a foundation for living in your best body. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. Sakara gives you the tools that you need to transform your life with their organic, ready-to-eat meal delivery program and functional wellness essentials. Their nutritionally designed, chef-crafted breakfasts, lunches, and dinners are made with powerful plant-rich ingredients, helping boost your energy, support your digestion, curb your sugar cravings, and get your skin glowing. Plus, it's all delivered right to your door, ready to eat. Sakara's functional, plant-rich wellness essentials help you create a body you love living in. From their best-selling Metabolism Super Powder to The Foundation, their daily supplement pack, Sakara's products are designed to support your wellness goals anytime, anywhere. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter code LOCKEDON20 at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/LOCKEDON20 to get 20% off your first order. That's Sakara.com/LOCKEDON20. We talked about the players. I gave you some quotes from Giannis, from MJ, from KD. Let's talk about Monty Williams himself. He's sort of the guy that sparked this idea for me and put into words what I think we all saw in that Game 7, which is, what in the world is going on with these role players and why are they not able to step up? But I think Monty, as the caretaker, he always calls himself the caretaker of the program. He's obviously the head coach. We know what the head coach's job is. To me, first and foremost, it's getting your team ready to play. That's the most simple way that I always try to think of it. And that can mean a game plan. That can mean emotionally. That can mean interpersonally. So a lot of this falls on him, and he took the ownership of it in that initial quote that I read you from that post-Game 7 press conference on the next day. So actually, on the coach side, all of these quotes are either from Greg Popovich or about Greg Popovich. One, because I feel like, so I think Steve Kerr now is the best sort of leader of men type of player, of coach in the NBA. But it's hard to separate Kerr from the two guys who he learned at the feet of, which are Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. The Phil Jackson stuff, there's surprisingly little in terms of quotes, probably because it was so long ago and the quotes aren't on the internet the way that they were. But also, Greg Popovich, I think the modern NBA coach philosophy derives from him so much. And we know for Monty that it obviously does. So I was poking around. A lot of the best quotes were coming from the Pop side of things already, plus the relationship with Monty being a player there, then like a coaching intern, I think is what he technically was called, and then in the front office there after he left coaching for a moment. It's undeniable that impact is there, and Monty talks about Pop all the time. So let's dive in. This one's from Pop. He said, I think he was sort of during the rebuild. It might have been, I think it was like the past couple of years after Aldridge and Kawhi and then obviously DeRozan ultimately left the team. And here's what he said. So I knew that patience is like the first step in showing confidence in somebody or in a group. So if you expect everything quickly, that's just not going to work. It's going to hurt their confidence. I think you would obviously say Monty has been more than patient with Ayton, Bridges, Cam Johnson, Cam Payne. I mean, most of those guys have been here for 3 seasons. All of them have. Cam Payne, 2 plus the bubble. I think this is actually when it has to start to change a little bit. And that might be a surprising angle on this, but I do feel like the patience, it's not that the patience is running out and now you must perform. It's not that, but it is um this is payoff time. You put the patience in, you put the work in with a person. I mean, this applies to outside of just sports. You allow a person to grow so that when you need to count on them, you can. And this is just whether they like it or not, whether Monty likes it or not, whether it feels natural. This is that moment. Chris Paul cannot continue to be the end all be all alpha everything of this team anymore. These other guys are going to need to be a bigger part of it, undeniably. And so that patience is still going to be there. There's going to be growing pains with that. There always will be. But this is the time when it's pedal to the metal. Like, it's time to go. So the patience happened. Now it's payoff. All right. This quote is from PJ Carlesimo, who coached under Pop and obviously against him. He was a coach in the NBA for a long time. Here's what he said, quote, he spends way more time off the court in terms of his relationship with his players than I think most coaches. It's his ability to connect with people and the fact that he genuinely cares about them and their family and them as individuals. That comes across, and players know that. I think that also enhances his ability to be demanding at times because he is demanding, but he's way more of a positive guy than a negative guy. Guys want to play for him because they know he cares about them. So again, continuity, another thing I've been talking about and emphasizing during the offseason so far, it's a theme here again. The hours, the years that Monty has put into connecting with these players as people and, forming that culture, forming that identity and bonding with them. This is where the program that Monty talks so much about comes to life. It's these moments. There's so many famous stories about the retreat that Pop organized after the Ray Allen shot and the loss in 2013 finals. The fact that they went and they watched that game once and then flushed it down the toilet and went about business and dominated that next season, destroyed the Heat the next year in 5 games in the finals, won that last title of the Duncan era, and then everybody went off into the sunset. This team sees itself as a family, just like those Spurs teams did. Monty is the patriarch of that, and his trust, his care in these people as people matters. And these are the moments that prove that. I think it will shine through, but it's a big test. It's a big lift, and the head coach is going to be the guy who sets the tone for it, especially with the general manager in James Jones, who's so behind the scenes, which we'll get to him to close out the show. Last quote is from Joe Prunty, who actually was an assistant, I believe, under Igor Kokoshkov, may have been under Jay Triano. I don't remember. But Joe Prunty, now an assistant in Atlanta. He also has coached alongside Pop in the past. Here's what he said, quote, Pop brings the best out of people in terms of, look, this is what we need from you. And he's demanding. He wants you to be great. And so that's why the players that have gone through the program and the success that they've had, not only as players and moving on to different teams, but also in becoming coaches and general managers, the coaches that have been with him and have moved on, he gives you that confidence because he wants you to participate. I liked that last part. He gives you that confidence because he wants you to participate. Obviously, stylistically, Monty borrows a lot from Pop too. He coaches that egalitarian style, that 0.5 offense. It's trust your teammates, make a quick decision, find the best shot. He plays a lot of players like Pop. He kind of empowers people because they know that they're going to get an opportunity at some point, especially during the regular season. I do think, though, this is another area where change needs to come, where Monty can be better in terms of embracing everybody. I think him and James Jones have a pretty good relationship. So I think, and they see eye to eye, they operate in tandem. So I think if a player's ending up on the Suns roster, for the most part, that's going to mean that Monty has given the approval of it, the stamp of approval, that he believes there's something in that player that can produce for this team and help the team. But he doesn't always coach like that. Sure, many of you already in your head know where I'm going. Aaron Holiday, they trade for this guy. He's young. He's about to be a restricted free agent, a player that they could invest in, that they could try to keep. They get him for basically nothing. They throw some cash to the Pacers, and then we see how much of a difference and a sort of a breath of fresh air, really, that Aaron Holiday was, just a type of player in terms of his energy, his defensive tenacity, things like that the Suns just didn't have. And yet, by the end of the regular season into the playoffs, he's just banished from the rotation. He gets those couple of opportunities late in the Pelican series, and then that's it. Weird, not. And I think there were people, I don't think, if Aaron Holiday plays, that the Suns win the Dallas series by any means, but I do think it was strange to watch how that played out. Equally strange, Abdul Nader. Monty tossing him into those conference finals games against the Clippers last year after the injury, and then this year, I think injuries colored a lot of it, but it was very up and down. You never quite knew. It seemed like they came into this regular season feeling like Nader was going to be that backup wing for them, which was strange. But then he never really got off the ground. And even DeAndre Ayton, I think, is another example of this in terms of, there's been that push-pull of what is Ayton, what does he want to be, what can he be, versus what do the Suns need out of him? What are they telling him to do? And that's obviously a bigger conversation that colors a lot of the free agency stuff going on, but I don't think it's irrelevant to this conversation of confidence. I think Ayton's extremely confident at what he has been asked to do in this current role, but I don't think he has a lot of confidence expanding beyond that. And that is part of why he hasn't expanded beyond that. So I think that's going to be another area where Monty has to sort of rededicate himself to that style on the court that he wants and developed to pretty great success with Ricky Rubio that first season. And off the court, really developed that cohesion with James Jones of like, what is a Suns player? Everybody who comes through here, I need to trust can contribute and play at a high level and buy in and know that they're going to fit the system and fit the players, fit the personalities here. That takes time. I'm not overlooking that. The teams that are the best at that have that consistency for years and years where that's able to be developed. I think the Suns are on their way to it, and I think they can take another step forward next year. Main character in all of that will, of course, be James Jones. We'll get to him to close the show. First, guys, today's show brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting odds, stats, and info all year long, including this year's NBA playoffs, the NHL. We're in the finals basically there as well. Major League Baseball regular season and all the latest fight news and odds and info as well. They have articles, podcasts, all of it to inform your betting. Let's see. I get antsy about these regular season wins. I know they're going to wait until it's already the free agency's over, all that stuff. Let's see. They have all these Lakers odds. Let's look at that. Or NBA player futures. We have NBA Finals MVP odds. Steph is minus 120, but the series is tied at 1-1. That feels juicy. Put plus 120 on Tatum. Those aren't like amazing odds, but that's pretty good. You could also envision a Jaylen Brown. That's plus 500. And Al Horford, plus 4,000. I mean, if he plays really well in every Celtics win, you could see it. If they won the series, plus 4,000 is pretty darn nice odds. All of it and more in every single sport at BetOnline, including live betting, esports odds, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the latest trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So James Jones is the last piece of this puzzle. We talked about the roster. We talked about the players on the floor, in the locker room, and we talked about the head coach at the very top of it all through the lens of his sensei, so to speak, in Greg Popovich. Let's talk about James Jones. So it's interesting because a lot of what confidence is trusting in yourself, trusting in your own achievements, trusting in your own success. As players, somebody like Devin Booker has a lot to fall back on. He's a back-to-back All-Star. He's a first-team All-NBA player. He is, both him and Chris Paul have earned MVP votes the past two seasons. They've put together, back-to-back top two seeded regular season campaigns. Monty Williams has made the playoffs with two separate franchises. He turned this team around overnight by implementing a system and a culture that made everybody better. I'm not sure what James Jones, I'm not sure if he has as much to fall back on. If I were him, this would feel sort of new. I don't mean that he doesn't have the success. Of course, he played a big part in all of that. He went out and got Cam Johnson. He went out and got Chris Paul. He went out and got a lot of these pieces. He doesn't like when we say pieces, so I will not say that. He went out and got a lot of the people in this franchise that have helped it to be successful. But this part is new to him, is what I come down on. The build is over. That's really been what this was, right? This was a build to a crescendo. Maybe he feels like that crescendo can stick out for another, year, you can basically roll this over again and you'll get similar results, and then you tinker and there's that last push and you finally get over the hump. Maybe that's where he is. I think he probably doesn't. And so if that's the case, this part of the build is a very unique part. It's one that a lot of teams fail at, Portland, Houston. I know I'm forgetting the Sixers, these teams who are right there, but never quite get the mix right. That's really hard. But I also think Jones, of course, has his whole career of playing, of being an athlete, of being on great teams to fall back on if he doesn't quite have that in his front office experience. So if you go all the way back to 2006, he was on these same Phoenix Suns. They mostly ran it back after a gutting playoff loss in 2006. They basically said, hey, Amari will be back next year, and that'll make a world of difference. I tend to think that was the right call because I think that 06-07 team was the best one in franchise history in terms of talent and success. And we know the hip check and all that. In 2011, though, the Heat very famously lose to the Dallas Mavericks in the finals. And the Heat go out and get Shane Battier, who revolutionizes their team and the whole entire league by unlocking small ball for them. He allows LeBron to play more of that power forward spot because Battier can just be a floor spacer on offense. He doesn't clog the floor. He can allow LeBron to get into the post more, etc. And he can defend basically whoever you want him to on the other side. In 2015, the Cavs go out and do something pretty similar, getting Richard Jefferson after their finals loss to the Warriors. They also got Channing Frye, who was a shooter for them, somebody to, again, unclog, modernize, versatilize their team. And Richard Jefferson really just is their Shane Battier. This year was supposed to do that for the Suns, though, which is sort of the interesting part. Jones went out and got JaVale McGee, Landry Shamet, who sort of plugged those holes, made the team a little bit more versatile and deeper. Neither guy was quite as good as Battier or Richard Jefferson, I would say, and they're not quite that missing piece in terms of the versatility, but they did that already. So I guess the question now becomes, if Jones wants to reinforce the confidence that the players have in each other, in themselves, etc., does that come via another big piece, another big swing, a big shakeup to kind of revamp what the team looks like and put everybody into a role that feels more comfortable? Or is it, let me go get another couple of pieces? Again, he would not like me saying that. Let me go get another couple of characters. Let me go make this roster better on the margins, and that will lift everybody. It would be that rising tide. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I lean toward a bigger move. I mean, the other thing is, should he have to have any confidence? I would say, confidence, yes. Cockiness or, overconfidence, I think it's a GM's job to never be too confident, to be level-headed, because you don't want to drink your own Kool-Aid, right? You don't want to be the guy who is so self-assured of yep, we got this in the bag. You clearly didn't, because you just lost. The rest of the league's not slowing down, trying to improve. So why should you, right? It's sort of a GM's job to never be content. With all of that said, I think that James Jones will operate the same way that he always has. Maybe that sounds like a hedge on my part, but patience and confidence and self-assuredness in that way, in sort of the sticking to this will work, the young guys will continue to get better, and we have the flexibility to improve the roster if we need to. That's always been his MO. Last summer, he didn't really need to do it too much because they were so close and they felt like they were right on the cusp of that championship win. I think we all agreed it was the right move. Maybe not the individual moves. Like, I don't know if everybody thought the Shamit thing was very smart or whatever, but like we all sort of thought, let's basically see this thing get run back, and that should be enough. And that's what he did. This year, I think there's a little bit more of a sense of urgency. The flexibility is still there from a roster, a salary, a draft pick standpoint, and from a, the players and the way that they fit. I think you can mix and match pretty easily. So he'll probably just stick to that script. If there's something there, if there's an Ayton trade that feels worth it, he'll do that. If there is a Cameron Payne upgrade that can be made that will not, shake things up too much and allow more stability at that spot, he will do that. If there's a veteran to be had that can make this team better, he will do that. I think he's proven that. But I also don't think he's going to make a move for the sake of making a move, or that he's going to be stubborn and keep the roster together just to keep the roster together. I just think he is level-headed, and that's sort of its own form of confidence. It's confidence in himself, I guess, is where it ends up, right? I know what it looks like. I know what it looks like to win in the NBA. I did it as a player multiple times. I was around greatness everywhere that I went. I built a championship team in Phoenix. I built a championship culture in Phoenix in 4 years. It's sort of, are you not entertained? But it's like, are you not confident, I guess, to bring it full circle here. So all of these things will have to happen. I think being a fly on the wall and some of the conversations happening around there in the past few weeks would have been really interesting. And I think a lot of it would have centered around that. How do we come back from this? How do we harden and control our minds and just redevote ourselves to the task at hand? And it'll take everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. I might start to dip into like some loose draft coverage, some like how should the Suns be thinking about, is it worth it getting a pick, etc. type of shows, because the draft's only 2 weeks away. We'll see. And then Aaron Edwards will be back here to close the week. So hit subscribe, hit follow wherever you're listening. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen as we make our way through the postseason. Now go make Locked On NBA Big Board your second listen to catch up on everything going on with the NBA draft.